Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening. This is Midnight Ramblings number 3. The title of our talk, our main focus, Brian Williams had the guts to leave MSNBC. We'll be talking about that. It's quite a story I wanted to talk about for a long time. Fascinating story. And we'll also be talking about other things too. May even show an image of Bob Joyce, our most popular topic, the pastor from Benton, Arkansas, Bob Joyce. Many say he just doesn't look like he could possibly be 87 years old. As I record this, we'll show an image that is close up, and you can decide for yourself. As people are doing in our Bob Joyce videos, I thank you for the response. Our new video, The One Mofo Rule, is getting attention. I want to hear about your mofo experiences. Have you experienced the One Mofo Rule? I bet you have. And I'll be looking in the comment sections for you to share a concise mofo experience in a respectful way, of course. We're having fun here talking about some of the challenges of life, some of the weird things that happen in life in the One Mofo Rule, and I give some examples that I've experienced. Also, we talk about a number of other topics here at the Virtual Church of the Disillusioned, and I'll mention them in further detail at the end of this video. It's not a long midnight ramblings, so I hope you'll stay with me, and would love to have your input here. All right. Brian Williams, well, he became known after many years as America's most trusted anchorman. He began in a market that I'm not even sure, a small market, but soon worked his way up to the local CBS station in New York City, WCBS TV, and he was, soon the 6 o'clock anchor, and people loved him. He has quite a presence on air, handsome man, and before you know it, he got the NBC nightly news anchor spot. He was on at 6:30, maybe in the beginning it was 7 o'clock, and then they moved it to 6:30. And he quickly was able to win the viewers. The ratings began to climb, and he would eventually, after many years, be called America's most trusted anchorman. He held that title for a number of years. Since he was a friendly, warm guy, he was noticed by the late night talk shows, especially David Letterman, who hosted the late night show on CBS. They wouldn't give him the Tonight Show on NBC, so he left NBC, where he was on like at 12:30 in the morning for many years. That's where he arose to fame. And so when he was denied the Tonight Show, when it went to Jay Leno, David began his program opposite Leno on CBS, and had a loyal following. He was beating Jay Leno for a long time until a situation happened where Hugh Grant, who is one of my favorite actors, I'm not ashamed to admit that. I have enjoyed a number of Hugh Grant movies, including Notting Hill, Love Actually, and many other Hugh Grant films. What is it? 4 Funerals and a Wedding? I think that's it. One of the first times I saw him, just a very charismatic chap. And what happened is Hugh Grant made a stupid decision to go to Sunset Boulevard late at night, which of course is in Hollywood, Los Angeles, California. If you've lived in LA, as I have, you know that the girls are on Sunset Boulevard and the boys are on Santa Monica Boulevard. And Hugh Grant was very popular with the ladies. He didn't have to go to Sunset Boulevard, but he made that choice in his fancy car and was caught by LAPD with a prostitute, receiving a favor from that prostitute on Sunset Boulevard. And so he decided to go tell his story. He couldn't ignore this. Obviously, all the entertainment shows were covering it. He decided to tell his story to Jay Leno, who welcomed him to the program, and then looked him right in the eye and said, "What the hell were you thinking?" And everybody laughed, and you gave his usual befuddled Englishman look and told the story as best he could. And that show that night was number one in late night, and Jay Leno was able to hold on to the number one spot in late night after the Hugh Grant appearance forever. Isn't that amazing? Amazing. So he owes a lot to Hugh Grant, whose movies have made well over $1 billion in gross sales. People liked the romantic comedy, and for many years he was the top dog, and he can do dramatic roles. So anyway, David Letterman took a liking to Brian Williams, America's Most Trusted Anchorman. And, Brian saw the show. He knew what he had to do. He had to come on and be entertaining. He had to tell some amusing stories. It wasn't just coming on and commenting about the news and being all serious. He had to come up with some folksy stories to tell as well. And he would come on and he would talk about times he was actually out there on the field covering stories. He was in a plane with the soldiers, with the Air Force, and they were almost hit. And he talked about his times with generals and colonels, and they gave him gifts that he very much appreciated, those kind of stories. And of course, there were people out there, there were generals and colonels and soldiers, Air Force people out there that knew the stories that he was telling weren't exactly the truth. He was embellishing. He was, in some cases, telling falsehoods, and they said that. And it wasn't long before there was a scandal with America's Most Trusted Anchor, and he made an apology, but it wasn't a very thorough apology, and it wasn't really enough for the viewers. And NBC, that was paying Brian Williams millions of dollars, they knew that they had a problem here, and it was time to bring in Lester Holt. But they didn't want to get rid of Brian. They knew that he had to step away from the top spotlight for a while. There needs to be a time where you do your penance. And they said, well, gee, we've got this MSNBC that nobody seems to watch. Why don't we put him on there as the breaking news anchor? The breaking news anchor. And that's what they did. So anytime there was a big story, Brian would break in and take control and cover the story and interview people and what have you, have the reporters out there in the field. Or if there was a big event, he would be the anchor of that. The problem was that that didn't happen every day. And here they are paying him a lot of money, and there were just too many days when he wasn't used. And they said, well, we've got to have more Brian Williams. We've got to come up with something else. So they came up with an 11 p.m. show live called The 11th Hour with Brian Williams. And it quickly started to gain an audience. Even if they only watched the first half and then went to a late night talk show, a lot of people have tired of hearing the local crime reports on the local news, like in New York and Philadelphia and places like that. They may want to hear the local weatherman. We have some good ones in New York, that's for sure, including Lonnie Quinn on CBS, WCBS. But they would rather hear Brian Williams talking to intelligent people. He had some good guests on. He seemed to have some balance in the beginning of the 11th hour. But, then Donald Trump came down the escalator and began to say that CNN, MSNBC was fake news and what have you. I mean, in the beginning, CNN in 2015 was covering the Donald Trump rallies live. They thought he was a joke. They didn't think he could ever be president. But he captured the imagination of people. And I have long said that I am not a big Trumper. I am aware that he can be off the charts, that he can say the wrong thing, that his behavior can be bad. I'm more for Ron DeSantis in 2024, but would certainly support Trump over any Democrat that I see out there. Although, let me say this, Joe Manchin is a fine man. He's just a fine man trying to hold back the destruction of America. So way to go, the senator from West Virginia. You're doing God's work. You really are. And he has liberal views in some areas, but he knows that the country is going bankrupt. He knows that the squad is bad for America. He knows that progressives that lean towards a special kind of communism, he knows that's all bad for America. And but Brian Williams began to shift in the 11th hour. He always had some good guests on, but now they seem to have a mission that has become too commonplace on MSNBC in general and on CNN. As I said in a previous video, Megyn Kelly did a wonderful job pointing out how the reporters on CNN, for example, destroyed their reputations by losing all their credibility, by losing all their integrity, and being on a mission to destroy Donald Trump because they're so consumed with hate for him and they don't want to present the other side. They just want to have one partisan hack on after another. Young people that barely know their ass from their elbow. And here they are pretending to be experts on the subject, or they have older people that are willing to put their credentials aside and become a partisan hack trying to be like a spokesman for the Democratic cause, and people are disgusted by them. It wasn't that many years ago. People like Anderson Cooper and Jake Tapper and Wolf Blitzer were respected. We trusted them. But as Katie Tur, who's on MSNBC, would learn, that's no longer the case. She talked about this last week. A recent poll showed that more than 60% of Americans, that includes Republicans and moderate Democrats, don't trust the liberal news media. They don't trust them at all. And she is, so surprised by this. And says, I don't know what that means for me in the future. I don't know what I think about being a news reporter anymore, Well, you sold out. You promoted a philosophy that makes many Americans, both Democrat and Republicans, sick to their stomach. They see the heart of America being torn apart by progressive opportunists that don't love this country, that don't have any values. They don't want to support their constituency. They want power for themselves, and they want to spend us into further bankruptcy and promote the most extreme agenda. And Americans are going to show in November of this year, 2022, that they're not having it. They deserve to be thrown out on their keister. They do. So anyway, in the case of Brian Williams, he continually started to make the 11th hour program more and more one-sided. It was clear now that he was a liberal. It was clear that he thought Trump was an idiot. He didn't want to have other views on there like he used to. Now it was the same people coming on every night. There were some brilliant people who I just don't understand where they're coming from anymore, like John Meacham, brilliant man, but like Fareed Zakaria, he seems to have lost all his objectivity. All his objectivity because, again, of hatred for Donald Trump, who, of course, had a booming economy, got respect from the world leaders, even if they didn't like him, because they knew they couldn't mess with him, and just was able to make things happen. He didn't certainly have a border out of control where one country is trying to move into another country, people from other countries coming over. I am not a person who is anti-immigrant. They're all God's people. But of course, we have to have an orderly system, and we can't have everybody coming over to the United States of America when no other country will help us. They just won't help us. So we're left with too many people to handle, too many people to possibly welcome into America when we're doing this on our own. And Joe Biden says, come on in, and all hell breaks loose. Cartel members, fentanyl, people with long criminal records all over America now because of Joe Biden. You want to talk about one man, just like in Russia there's one man that brought so much destruction. In North Korea there's one man. Well, now here in America there's one man that has done so much harm to America, including making our military look foolish in Afghanistan, as they stayed behind the airport fence and didn't engage the soldiers who were preventing Americans who wanted to leave on planes. They didn't come through with the promise that Joe Biden vocalized, which is that he would leave no Americans behind. That was not true. That was a lie. Eventually, though, MSNBC got so off the charts and so wild, news speakers like Joy Reid coming on, and, so many other bozos that I think when his contract was getting ready to expire, he realized he had had enough of this, that there was still some integrity in Brian Williams. Yes, he had told stories to David Letterman. And why did he do that? Because he knew that David Letterman was leaving, and he became just on a fantasy trip. He wanted to become the next host of the David Letterman show, of the CBS 11:30 show. He wanted to be the next host. So he would come on and try to be funny, and he started to stretch stories. He started to embellish. And then when he gave an apology, when he was caught, it didn't seem like it was a very thorough, sincere apology, and people didn't buy it. But he rebuilt his reputation on MSNBC, and then became consumed with hatred, it seems, for Donald Trump. That's how it seems. I don't know what's in Brian Williams' heart, but he seemed to lose his objectivity to a degree. But he had enough credibility to realize that MSNBC was so off the charts at this point, so biased, so one-sided, that he didn't want to be part of it anymore, and he did not renew his contract. And as I do this video, he's still not on the air, but he was offered the CBS Evening News. They haven't gotten any ratings since Dan Rather and Bob Schieffer, who filled in for a while. He got some ratings, but really Walter Cronkite was the gold standard, but it's been a long time since Walter Cronkite was on the CBS Evening News in the 70s. He was a legend, of course. But Katie Couric couldn't get ratings. Nora O'Donnell can't get ratings. Always third, and they offered it to Brian Williams, offered to pay him a lot of money. And he wants more than coming on to a station that's not really serious about news anymore and just having 22 minutes. He wants something better than that. So he turned it down. He turned it down, and he's still off the air, but he'll be back. I think he loves it. He's looking for just the right opportunity, just like Chris Cuomo. Chris Cuomo wanted to join the fire department in the Hamptons till he realized, man, there's a lot of work involved in this. Firefighters are constantly busy, even if they're volunteer firefighters. There's a lot of meetings. There's a lot of events. You have to respond to a lot of various situations. You have to back up other fire companies. You have to respond to MVAs. God bless the volunteer firefighters, and there's less and less of them because the new generation coming up doesn't want to work for free. In fact, they're not too thrilled to be working for $16, $17 an hour at 16 years old at McDonald's. That's how bad it's getting. So the argument is that, well, we lost 1 million people via COVID, and say 1 million people have come in from the border. Well, they're going to be more willing to do those jobs that Americans are now too lazy to want to do. They live home free with mommy and daddy, and mommy and daddy lets them get away with that in many cases and play their endless video games. So Brian Williams, it's a fascinating story of someone that started off as America's most trusted anchorman, and then things took a turn for him. And just like all the other reporters on CNN and MSNBC, they allowed Donald Trump, one of his big accomplishments is to expose the liberal news media for what they are. It was in 2014, 2015, people still trusted Anderson Cooper, still trusted even Don Lemon to a degree. Didn't always agree with them, but they had both sides on, and they weren't on a mission to destroy the Republican Party. The whole 9/11 Commission situation. Here was Stephanie Rule, who got the job when Brian Williams. I just happened to catch a few minutes of her program tonight, and here she is with her liberal hacks on, the same people she has every night. You think by now she'd realize nobody's watching her show, and that the boss would say, we've got to do something different. We've got to do something different. But here she is, and she says, do you think, she says to one of these clowns, she says, do you think that the American people, she doesn't say Republicans, she doesn't say even moderate Democrats, she says, do you think the American people think that the January 6th committee is partisan? Is partisan? You know? Well, of course, moderate Democrats that have their thinking cap on and Republicans know that this committee is extremely partisan because there's only Democrats on there. All of them wanted Donald Trump impeached for years, some from the very first day he stepped in the office, as we've said before. People like Jim Jordan and the great Rand Paul don't always agree with him, but he's a very fascinating doctor. He's an eye doctor that occasionally practices when he's on break. And he's a fascinating man, just like his dad is. They weren't allowed to be on this commission because they would have exposed the hypocrisy. They would have asked a whole different set of questions, and they didn't want that. So you got the likes of Adam Schiff and Liz Cheney. If Adam Schiff told me that there was a chair behind me, I'd look before I sat down. I'd look before I sat down. I don't trust anybody on that commission. I don't respect or revere anyone in that commission. I think they all have an agenda. They have come in like the Gestapo and had people arrested in the middle of the night like this is North Korea. I don't like it. I don't respect it. When you have private conversations with the president, whether it be Obama or whether it be Trump, those are private conversations. And they're just trying to take everybody's rights away, and they're trying to make sure they do everything they can that we don't have a terrible upset in November of 2022. But, you know, people aren't watching this committee. They're watching the economy tank. They see what has happened in the last 18 months. And even the Quinnipiac poll, Liberal University, I have to give them credit because they tell the truth that less than 32% of the people want Joe Biden to be a candidate again in 2024. He's not going to be a candidate. Everybody knows that. Kamala Harris and even Governor Gavin Newsom, who's destroyed Los Angeles, destroyed San Francisco, has let the liberal DAs create a war zone in places like Los Angeles and San Francisco. When they could have stopped it, they took an oath to protect and serve. They have been horrible for the state that they serve in. We've seen dictator governors in Maine, Oregon, and of course, then we have Governor Whitmer, who wants to run for presidency, total dictator. It's not serve the people, it's force the people to do what you want them to do. And that won't be easy, again, if they try that. They probably won't try it till after the midterms. You know, they won't try the mandates again. I'm triple vax, probably get another vaccination. I'm not anti-vax at all. But in terms of having those little 5-year-olds wear a mask to school, it's not going to be so easy this time. It's not going to be so easy. People, you know, had never experienced anything like coronavirus. They had never experienced a pandemic. So they went along with it in 2020, but it's going to be a whole different thing now. Going to be a whole different thing. It's called this school board president. She wants mandates again for little kids to have to wear a mask in school. And someone said, well, what if the parents aren't going to go along with that? They said, well, then the kids will have to Zoom. They can't come. More and more people are going to say, you are my representative, you are not my dictator. And there's going to be less and less effectiveness with that task. Even Anthony Fauci is stressing now when he comes on. He's even been on Fox with Neil Cavuto. He stresses we're not trying to interrupt anybody's lifestyle. We're just saying, you know, make intelligent decisions, and maybe you want to wear a mask when you're indoors and in certain situations and what have you. You know. They won't come on strong until after the midterm elections unless they're really stupid. But I think people realize that we don't want the progressive agenda. We had Pete Buttigieg, who they're going to try to push for president, I think, in 2024, saying he is astonished. He is astonished that more people haven't bought Teslas, that they don't understand the seriousness of global warming, and they aren't running out and buying a Tesla. $70,000 looks like a freaking Kia. Looks like a Kia. It's not really a stylish car, is it? What do you get, 300 miles? And if you're out in the desert there, can't find a charging station. By the way, they use to charge the batteries, they have to use electricity. Coal is used, fossil fuel, natural gas, all comes in to making the electric cars actually be able to drive down the highway. So $70,000, at least an 8-month wait for the most part, to get a Tesla. And here you have this guy who knows nothing about being transportation secretary, Pete Buttigieg, saying, I am astonished that everybody is not running out and buying a Tesla. This is the kind of quality of a cabinet that Mr. Biden has put together. And what's he doing yesterday? Because, Midnight Ramblings, it's well after midnight now, because this is take two. The first one that a few of you saw is gone because the music was too loud, and just a technical issue there that is my fault. Anyway, no music this time, not this time. But Joe Biden is in Delaware, the state that he loves, the state that he has his home in, and he wants to be there every weekend, and he's putting down Delaware. He's saying how high the cancer rate is, although it is much improved now. They've done much to improve the lowering the amount of cancer cases in the state of Delaware. But in this talk, he says that he has cancer. What? What did the president just say? He has cancer? Oh boy, we're all thinking, here comes Kamala. We knew it was a real possibility. We still think it's a real possibility. And oh boy, he just said he has cancer. And then later, as they always do, the White House has to walk it back and say he was talking about melanoma skin cancer that he had several times in his life. And he thinks Delaware had something to do with that, apparently. And so that's what he was referring to. He doesn't currently have cancer. Oh, boy. He is a walking, talking gaffe machine. And when they show it all together, when they show all the clips of him totally losing his train of thought, and this can happen to all of us, but you can't be president of the United States when you're in cognitive decline. And then to go over to Saudi Arabia, fist bump. Well, I'm not so hard on him for that. It was like he was just saying hello in his mind. So I'll cut him some slack on that. People don't cut him slack on that. I don't think he was endorsing the fact that they're killers, just like Putin is. But he goes over there to beg for oil. He mentions the American journalist that was brutally murdered by the guy he's talking to. He gave the go-ahead for this American journalist to be brutally murdered. He mentions it, but he's over there begging for oil when we have more than enough oil in the state of Texas to once again become energy sufficient like we were when Donald Trump was president, like we were then. Again, I'm not a big Trump guy. I'd rather see DeSantis. I don't want to see mean debates where every candidate is called a name by Donald Trump. But if Donald Trump gets a nomination over any Democratic candidate that I see that's possible, I would certainly support Trump over one of these progressive people that are all for themselves. It's all about power for themselves. AOC pretending to be arrested, putting her hands behind her back, always wants to play the victim. She says it's fine to harass and intimidate Supreme Court justices at their homes, which is against the law, by the way. And those poor neighbors around, I thought they would all live in gated communities and it would be hard to get to them, but it's not true. So, they're surrounded by a police force all the time. And these poor neighbors that have to deal with this, maybe the Republicans should go to the liberal justices. But no, two wrongs don't make a right. It's wrong. It's against the law to do that. You cannot intimidate judges to try to reverse their decision or get them not to make a decision. All they did was turn it back to the states. So each individual state can decide for themselves. I don't believe if people want to have an abortion, they shouldn't be able to cross state lines to get it. I don't believe in that kind of stuff, no more than I believe in dictators. It would be wonderful. It would be wonderful if we could stop abortion in America. But you have to reach people's hearts. And you have to also provide for those who can't handle having a baby. You have to have a solid adoption program. You have to be able to take care of them. They may not have any kind of health insurance. You have to be able to take care of them. And people say, oh, well, next it'll be contraception, the morning after pill. That's not what this is about. But you can't force people to choose what is God's way. The Bible says, Jesus said, I knew you even when you were in your mother's womb. I knew you. Every life is precious to God. There's two lives involved. It's the mother. No man can get pregnant. It's the mother, and it's the child. As Mike Winger, preacher here on YouTube, very popular preacher, says, we don't even want to call them babies, when of course that's exactly what they are. I think that in November 2022, there will be a real signal sent to the progressive/communist movement that that's not the kind of America that we want. Global warming, I'm not saying it's not real. Things are getting warmer, a couple of degrees at a time. Very hot summer here in 2022. There's been hot summers before, though, and extreme weather all year round. January was, here on the East Coast, was an Arctic blast like I haven't experienced in years. We know that the hurricanes are worse than ever, the tornadoes. You know what? That horse has left the barn. I don't think we're going to be able to make changes. We're going to have to rely on God. I don't think it does any good for people like John Kerry to take their private jets all over the world. These celebrities that are progressives, some of them. Now, Mark Wahlberg, I don't know what his politics are. He's for the Tunnel for Towers organization, which is a wonderful organization that helps our veterans, builds them homes and what have you, wounded veterans, pays off mortgages. When a veteran dies in the service, wonderful. $11 a month they ask for. It's very worthy. Charity. Mark Wahlberg is on there as a spokesman often, but they were just saying in the news the other day, he flew his jet, his private jet. The total ride time was 9 minutes. 9 minutes. So liberals often don't walk the talk, right? And Christians have a problem walking the talk, don't we? We do. We have trouble because the flesh gets in the way, and it certainly hurts our witness. If you don't know Jesus is your personal Savior, he's just a prayer away. All you have to do is open up your heart, get into a quiet room, no distractions, and ask Jesus to come into your life, forgive you of your sins, cleanse you in his most precious blood. You want to receive the spiritual birth that he has for you. You want to be filled with the Holy Spirit. You want your sins to be washed and cleansed in his most precious blood. If you pray asking for that, if you pray with your heart to receive Jesus, he will reveal himself to you. That is all you have to do. He's just a prayer away. I believe the Lord led me to close like that. That's the best way to close. Thank you for all your comments. Okay, I'm going to show you the image I did promise from Bob Joyce that one of the viewers sent me. You can look at this close. A lot of lines, a lot of creases, a lot of aging. I don't deal with spots on the hand and stuff. That's for my man JJB. I don't get into those who want to talk about the teeth, the eyes, and things like that. There are other people much more qualified to do that, so check them out on YouTube, like JJB. But yeah, I see some aging on that face. I see some aging. Now, of course, you can use products. You can have Botox and what have you to smooth you out and look better. Robert Wayne Joyce would have turned 70 years old just the other day. I talk about the two Bob Joyce theory, Robert Wayne Joyce, and then a man who appeared around 2010, 2011, Bob Joyce. That's the possibility that I talk about in the videos that are doing very well. I thank you for all the comments. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Dave Mitchell. Thank you, Susie. So many of you respond, and many inspiring comments. Please keep the comments respectful and concise, and then we'll keep them up because we love hearing from you. Many more things to talk about here. Future Midnight Ramblings, if the Lord allows, and we have much to do with our internet stream that we want to get on the air this fall, if God allows. Thanks again, everybody. Talk to you soon.